My name's Jane Knight, and I'm an instructor, a clinical associate with the Medra MSSO. I'm also joined by my colleague, Dr. Carol-Ann Wilson.
Hello, everyone.
Carol-Ann's one of our... Thank you, Carol-Ann. Carol-Ann's one of our medical officers within the MSSO and also an instructor like myself. So I'll just give you a wave there. Welcome, everyone. The first slide explains that Medra came around in the mid-1990s. It was an ICH initiative, and at the time, the MSSO was put in place to maintain and distribute Medra. The activities of the MSSO are overseen by a steering committee, which has representatives from across the ICH regions, both industry and regulatory authorities. And some of the members are detailed here in this slide. The next slide explains that this Medra is owned by ICH, as is the material we present today. We do not distribute the slides for today, only the recording, because we feel that this session, the value of the session is in the discussion and the comments, not in the slides themselves. So that's why we don't share the slides. This slide explains that if you use any of the material or any of the information from today, you must acknowledge ICH as owners of the material. And you must, if you change anything or make anything, but I know it's difficult when you don't have a slide to do that, but if you quote it, then you must acknowledge ICH as the owners and explain any changes you've made. I've already said that we want to make the session interactive, so please do use the questions panel to raise your comments or your questions. Sometimes we might not agree on how some of the terms are coded, and we can have some discussion through the comments, but it may be that we have to agree to disagree in the interest of time. We can't take requests to code specific verbatim terms today via the questions, but what we can do is at the end, we'll give you the option in a survey that you can propose some examples for consideration, but please make sure that these are of general interest to the wider audience, not specific to your therapeutic area. So this is the information you need for joining the polling, the quiz questions that I mentioned. You can do it on your smartphone by scanning the QR code. That's the simplest way of doing it. Alternatively, you can use an internet browser, and if you do so, you need to type into the URL bar polev.com, nothing else, just polev.com. You'll then see the screen on the right-hand side, and you enter my name, Jane Knight 855, as the username. You don't put your own name in. It's completely anonymous, but by putting my name there, you will be able to join the presentation. Here's a test for you. Where are you joining us from today? Spain, India, North America, United States. Oh, Carol-Ann, South Africa.
Philippines, US, South Africa. Yeah, Congo maybe. Yeah.
Oh, someone's in, yes, Mid-Africa.
Central Africa.
I always feel this is Russia. It's such an honor, a privilege to do this.
Philippines, we have the Philippines with us.
Good. Lots across Europe. Welcome, Australia. Welcome wherever you are in the world. You're very welcome. Here are the credentials for the web-based browser. So this is the temporary credentials that I mentioned. You don't have to use them. If you have your own credentials, you can do so. I've shown you on the screen how you open we call it the new web-based browser. We're currently running two versions of the web-based browser side by side. This is because we've introduced a new application and the interface looks slightly different. So you'll notice that I'm going to use the new web-based browser and Carol-Ann's going to use the more traditional, the older one, so that you can see the difference. So challenges in coding, sometimes, as you'll see today, there may not always be an exact match. Sometimes there's more than one possible approach. The Points to Consider document also offers options in places, and sometimes it's the case that we understand terms differently. What we do when we code is we represent events by a best approximation, but overall we always code as reported without any assumptions. Sometimes you think you know what's being reported when you look quickly at a term, and it's only when you spend time and you look more closely that you realize what you're looking at isn't what you first thought it was. And we always include a couple of these pictures that can show the ambiguity or how easy it is, how our brain can play tricks on us. When I first saw this picture, I thought they were musical notes, but it's when you zoom in and you look more closely, you see that they're actually skiers with a shadow on a mountain or from a cable car. I'm not quite sure where they're coming from. They look like skiers, but and the terms are like that. Today, we've got a really nice group of terms. We've got a group of terms which at first appearance look to be very straightforward, but when you actually come to code them, you realize that there's more complexity than you may have thought when you first see them. Sometimes it's a case we need to take a different perspective. You go away, you look at a term differently, or maybe ask a colleague what they think. And this is why we find it useful the two of us do the session together. You see here, we've got what looks to be some kind of gazelle, an elephant, a giraffe maybe. But when you tip them upside down, you see that they become a seal, a turkey, or a penguin. So you see how it can be, and the terms are just like that. It's a balance when we code between applying rules for consistency and medical judgment that manage the risk to patients. We use medical references, and this can help us understand the reports and make decisions. And sometimes it's a case that we need to request a new concept to be added to MEDRA. So you'll see all of these today in our discussions. So with that, let's code together. Okay, now I've switched my camera off so as it's not so distracting for you all. So the first example we've got today, and Caroline has put this in the chat for you already, the term is feeling like he's been hit by a truck. So what is the patient feeling here? Like he's been hit by a truck. So he hasn't been hit by a truck, but he's describing the feeling. Can we infer any symptoms? Would it be an assumption to code something specific? What do we mean when we say we've been hit by, we feel like that? It seems to me like it's a physical sensation, I'd say, being hit by a truck. It's a physical thing rather than a mental thing. But what is there something more suitable with feeling that we can find? How would you code feeling like he's been hit by a truck? Here are some examples for you, and you can vote in the polling. The QR code is at the top of the screen if you need a reminder. Is it pain? Is it exhaustion or hangover? Is it a somatic hallucination? And we'll look at that term shortly in a bit more detail. Is it physically unwell? Feeling stoned? Feeling abnormal? Or do we need to seek clarification? I'll just give you a few more moments to vote. I see the numbers of responses is growing, so I'll just wait a moment. We often get feedback that we don't allow you enough time, so it's hard because we want to fit in as much as we can, but I'll give you a couple more moments. Okay, let's see where your votes are. Oh, real mix here. We've got quite a number of you. A quarter of you would seek clarification. The winner so far in the voting is feeling abnormal. Physically unwell is a popular choice as well. And a few of you would assume some symptoms. Or feeling stoned also got some votes there. Interesting. So let's have a look at the references. So Dorland's Medical Dictionary defines the term somatic hallucination as a hallucination involving the perception of a physical experience occurring with the body. So again, it's that physical thing, somatic meaning the body, a physical, so a feeling that's not there, but a hallucination, so a perception of something that's not there, not really there. Which is, I'm not sure that's really going on, because he may have the symptoms. He may actually have the symptoms. It's not that he believes he's been hit by a truck, or he feels that the truck has hit him, more that it's the symptoms. And then there are some other ideas there, similar terms to hit by a truck comes up there from the dictionary that we've referenced at the bottom, includes a number of terms that could be have the same meaning: exhausted, fatigued, haggard, bushed, another colloquialism there. So can we make any assumption? We may have the same kind of understanding, but can we make that assumption? Let's have a look in the browser and see what we have. So I'm going to go to the website now. I'm going to do exactly what I showed you on the screen, on the slide, how to use tools. And then on the right-hand side, I'm going to open the new web-based browser. I'll log in with my credentials. They're already saved. And I'm going to start with a search for feeling, because we've been told it's feeling. And I know Medra has a number of feeling terms available. So what do we have? We have some physical term relating to bloating, the chest, the abdomen, drunkenness feeling. Well, not really. That would be an assumption again. What's the PT for that one? He hasn't been told he's drunk. He just feels tired or worn out or in pain or feeling abnormal. That's a very general term. If we can't make any more assumption, that might be a good go-to fallback term. Feeling bad, blue, cool, dazed, detached, drunk, floating, no, high, hungry. You see how many of these there are. So when you see a term reported with feeling, if you have a report of feeling or felt, it's always a good idea to look in Medra for feeling, and you can just see the full list of all these that are available. Feeling stoned, we saw, that was in our list of options we gave you. Feeling abnormal, feeling strange also links to feeling abnormal. Feeling unwell is malaise. Malaise, maybe, but do we know? It's very difficult, isn't it? When we look down, we really don't know what's going on with this one. Ill feeling. It's probably the same as feeling unwell. Malaise. Lightheaded, we don't know that. So it's very difficult. I'm going to go to the feeling abnormal and look at the LLTs underneath it and see if there's anything there more specific. So I'm going to do a right-hand click, go to the browser and have a look and see under that PT which other terms there are. Cotton wool in head, feeling abnormal, feeling dazed, lifeless, miserable, stoned, strange, awful, feeling like a zombie. My gut feeling says that's probably the closest we're going to get. It's a bit spaced out, muzzy, fuzzy. It covers everything. We can look at the other terms nearby, the other PTs, have a look at the neighbors. That's always a good idea of something to do when you are coding. For have a look at what is available. The other thing I might look here is physical. That's where we saw the physical unwell term. Have a look what's under physical. We've got a lot of terms here. Feeling, physical abuse, assault, physical examination, no. Physical impairment, well, no, that's not the case. Physically unwell, that was the term we gave you in the option. That goes to malaise as well. We've had a few go there, so let's have a look at malaise. Do the same again. Malaise, feeling sick, feeling unwell, feeling generally ill. Feeling ill, no. Feeling unwell, no, I don't think so. I think the abnormal probably covers it better for me, because I'm not sure that we can make an assumption. So we would check all possible meanings of the colloquial phrase, and you saw that we used medical dictionary and another dictionary to get the lay expression meaning. Don't derive a medical diagnosis from any colloquially formulated consumer reports such as this. If there is no information, select feeling abnormal. But let's try first of all to get clarification if we can. And if no further information is available, we would have to code feeling abnormal. This term came from a proposal from one of our attendees a couple of sessions ago. So do we have any questions about that one, Carol Ann?
No, Jane, no questions for this one.
Okay, it's a bit soon probably. Let's move on to the next one then. Felt faint following cannulation. So another feeling term. Now they're feeling faint. What are they feeling? Well, they're feeling faint. That's again like a lightheaded feeling, isn't it? We're more specific than feeling abnormal. Is it related to the cannulation? And can we find a term that combines something happening after cannulation? The report hasn't told us that it's due to, it's following. So post, following, after. What would be the most appropriate LLT? So just for reference, let's have a look at the meaning of cannulation. Cannulation is the insertion of a cannula. Yes, a procedural term. What is a cannula? It's a tube for insertion into a vessel, duct or cavity, and during insertion its lumen is usually occupied by a trocar. So this is telling us that within the tube itself there's some other, and I'll show you a picture. A trocar is the center part which is usually pointed to help the insertion. What's the difference between a cannula and a catheter then? If it's a tube, a catheter is a tubular flexible surgical instrument inserted into a cavity of the body, generally to withdraw or introduce fluid, is what Dorlands tells us. So a catheter is for fluid withdrawal or introduction. A cannula could be for other purposes, and a cannula has something within it that helps guide it in. And decannulation means taking out of a cannula, in particular tracheostomy cannula, extubation, so removal. But we've been told it's due to cannulation, so the insertion hasn't told us the site of the cannula. Here are some pictures, so it could be for laparoscopy. And you see there, the top left, well, in all the pictures, you can see the trocar. That's the pointy piece that goes in the center, helping to guide the cannula in place. So this is the difference between the cannula and the catheter. Down the bottom, we have the more common, what I would call a venflon. I don't know what they're called these days. There's one with a three-way tap there to allow also for taking of blood when the cannula is in place. And bottom right, we see a tracheostomy cannulas there. So what would you code this one to? Felt faint following cannulation. So we've got the terms for the procedure: arterial, venous, vascular, or it may not even be those, but those are some options. Then we've got the felt faint, post-procedural dizziness, post-procedural complication, post-procedural syncope, or seeking clarification. I see the numbers are still going up, so I'll wait a few seconds more. Let's see where, carry on voting. I'll just see where your thoughts are. Don't be led. Oh, post-procedural dizziness is a very popular one, Carol Ann, there. We had discussions about this term beforehand. Carol Ann and I always enjoy these sessions because we have a chance to code ourselves and to discuss our differences of opinion sometimes on the terms. Post-procedural complication is also popular. Post-procedural syncope and felt faint. Interesting. Very interesting there. Thank you. Let's move on. I'll lock the poll. Post-procedural dizziness is our winner from the audience vote at 40%. So let's browse again. I'll go back to my browser. I'll have a search this time for the words we've been given, which is felt faint. So let's have a look. Let's search with faint, I think. And we're looking for feeling faint or felt faint, or let's see what we've got. Fainting. We've got faint as an LLT, an exact match of what I've typed in. The PT for that is syncope. So we'll look at syncope, and it's got links to the cardiac signs and symptoms, circulatory collapse, and disturbances in consciousness. So we'll come back to this and the meaning of this term. Faint goes to syncope, but our patient felt faint. So looking down, we've got some LLTs. We've got fainting, which I would expect to go to syncope as well, which it does. And then felt faint, which is the exact wording, which has a PT of dizziness. So interestingly, felt faint is not the same as fainting. Fainting goes to syncope, but this is a different concept. Near fainting has a term of pre-syncope, a preferred term with the same links to HLTs as syncope. So pre-syncope is the prodromal, the onset, the near fainting, getting close to fainting, whereas feeling faint is more of a dizziness, a lightheadedness, a feeling, whereas pre-syncope is the phase that leads up to syncope. So that shows you the meaning of those terms there. Which are any others we look for? So we know dizziness, we know, so let's have a look at post and see what we have, because we had post-procedural. Let's have a look at either post-procedural syncope, pre-syncope. Let's see what we have. We have post-procedural syncope, which has a PT of post-procedural complications circulatory. Now, this relates to the meaning of syncope, because syncope is always due to reduced blood flow, reduced oxygenation reaching the brain. So this is why it has a PT of circulatory problems. So that is post-procedural syncope, but our patient didn't faint, remember, and syncope is separate. So let's have a look. We saw that the PT for felt faint was dizziness. So let's have a look at dizziness, and we see we have post-operative dizziness and post-procedural dizziness, which has its own PT of procedural dizziness. So that would seem to be a good choice, and that's what all of you did when you chose in the voting. Let's have a look at the MEDRA term selection points to consider. Well, that tells us that we should always select a term that most accurately reflects the verbatim and be as specific as we possibly can. In particular, points to consider tells us that when we have a report of a post-operative or post-procedural term event, we should try to get a post-operative or post-procedural MEDRA LLT, and you can see there in the two examples on the screen. So we know we want to be as specific as possible about what's happened to the patient, and we know if we can find a post term, we will. Sometimes we're told that we may need to select two terms in order to capture everything that's been reported. So this might be the case that would we select a post-procedural complication term, which is quite general, but then also select the felt faint term? Would that be the approach in order to capture everything? We found some references here on a UK NHS website looking at the difference between dizziness, pre-syncope and syncope. So let's start with syncope at the bottom. Syncope is when a patient loses consciousness, so they actually faint. And as I've mentioned, it's the result of reduced oxygenated blood flow to the brain. This causes lightheadedness, buzzing in the ears, disorientation, a feeling that are actually going to faint, and they do faint. Pre-syncope is when a person almost but doesn't actually lose consciousness, but again, it's due to reduced flow of oxygenated blood to the brain. And there's the symptoms there: dizziness, blurring, narrowing of vision, headache, palpitations, more symptoms there. Whereas dizziness is a range of feelings: woozing, lightheaded, a sensation of spinning. Again, the feelings that, and it's through the patient describing the feelings of dizziness that the doctor can then determine the cause and see whether it is due to reduced oxygenation or not. So this is why MEDRA has the distinction between the felt faint and near fainting and fainting. So when you see these fainting terms, always check very carefully to make sure you get the closest match. The learning from this then is that you should evaluate the event as reported without making any assumptions. Use the exact words if you can. Remember to, if you can capture the relationship to the procedure as being a temporal relationship, do so, post rather than due to. Don't mix local site reactions with systemic complications. So this is the cannulation. I didn't search for a cannula site reaction and search for a combination term for the procedural complications. That's what I've learned through doing this term. And overall, I'm going to select the LLT post-procedural dizziness with a preferred term of procedural dizziness, and that agrees with the majority of you here today. And I would also seek clarification if the cannula was relevant to my product, if it was appropriate, not in all cases, but potentially if the cannulation is something that is relevant, you might want to make sure the cannulation is captured, and that also, depending on where it is, you may want to capture the reaction. Any questions on this one, Carol-Ann?
No questions to this one. I was expecting more questions.
Yes, everyone got it
about that. But there's just one comment from Martin regarding the feeling abnormal example, the malaise example. Similar terms are, he says, similar terms are seen very often, and it is really important to try to get some more specific information, whether this relates to dizziness or pain, because the feeling abnormal, of course, or also the malaise, they are not really helpful when it comes to signal detection, so safety analysis for certain products. Yeah.
Try to catch, but then if I assume pain and you might read it and think, well, feeling like a truck that hit by a truck, that's tiredness, we could then get inconsistency. So we mustn't make assumptions. But you're right, Martin, as soon as we can, wherever we can get more information, we should, but it's not always easy. It's a strange term to start with today. It was the end of our last session, but we didn't reach that far, so that's why we started with, but it did come from one of our attendees. So now we'll move on to bruising around the cannula site. Now we have a cannula site term, and we're told very clearly it's bruising. So why is this such a difficult term to code, you might think? Where's the bruising? Well, it's around the cannula. Is it related to the cannula? Well, probably, if the cannula's pierced a vessel. Is the type of cannula important? Well, maybe if that's your area of work, I don't know. And what would be the appropriate LLT? Well, this one can't be difficult, surely. Cannula, we've seen this already. Remember the definition of a cannula and a catheter, very similar there, but let's have a look now on where you would code it. Bruising around cannula site. Cannula site reaction, medical device site bruise, catheter site bruise, administration site bruise. Now you see why I'm mention how can it be so difficult? Look at all the options we've got, knowing what we do about a cannula. Which would be the best option here? We don't have a cannula site bruise in MEDRA. That's why you've got to choose from one of these. Not so, oh, still going up slightly. Not so many of you voting this time. Oh, there we go. More of you. Think it through. It takes a bit of working this one out, doesn't it? Administration site, infusion site. We know that cannulas can be used for infusion. They can be used for venipuncture, taking blood. They can be used for administering drugs. They can be used for insertion of a medical device, laparoscopy. We've seen that. So what is it? Is it a catheter? Well, we saw the difference. Is it a catheter or not? Is it a cannula site reaction? And how does Medra treat the term cannula and catheter? That's another question we haven't looked at yet, but I'll come to in a moment. You can always look at how Medra places the terms, and that's what I'm going to do. So I'm just going to carry on voting if you haven't done. Oh, look at this, a lot of votes here. Procedure site bruising seems to be the most popular, not making any assumption if it's a catheter or a cannula. It's good that you're capturing the bruising. I'm pleased to see that, and not just a reaction. Remember, PTC tells us we need to be as specific about the event as we can. We shouldn't make an assumption whether it was used for infusion or administration or venipuncture, because we don't know that. A catheter, a cannula could be for any of those purposes. Let's lock the poll. Procedure site bruising is the most popular. So let's have a look in Medra, and the placement of the terms might help us to rethink. So I'm going to look up the term cannula and site. First of all, let's look at all the Medra terms that capture something at a cannula site. We only have two terms, cannula site pain and cannula site reaction. So let's look at pain and look at the hierarchy of it. What's the PT? Now, interestingly, from a Medra perspective, although I showed you the difference in Dorland's, cannula is in both instances placed under the PT of catheter. Now we know that Medra treats the preferred term is the medical concept, and often the LLTs are synonyms or quasi-synonyms underneath. So generally, when I see the PT uses a different word, I feel it's okay to use that word and to choose a term at the PT level with that concept. So cannula and catheter, to me, are used interchangeably in relation to Medra coding because cannula is placed under the PT of catheter. Does everyone get? If you're not clear on that, let me know and I'll explain it again. So I feel more comfortable choosing a term that says catheter in it, and you see that they fall under the catheter site pain is under implant and catheter site reactions, under administration site reactions. Now this is interesting. We know that cannulas can be used not always for administration of a drug. It could be for something else, but for placement in Medra and for structure and having a good clear structure, that's where they're placed. But they are under implant and catheter site reactions at the HLT level. So based on that, I'm happy with the word catheter. So I would then look catheter bruise. I know that Medra treats bruising and contusion as together, but so if there isn't a bruise, that's the synonym I'd be thinking of. But I do have one catheter site bruise because the cannula, I'll go and have a look in the browser, good practice just to be sure. And there it has a lot of links into lots of socks. It's multi-axial into 4 socks. Catheter site bruise, you see that it's vascular, skin, injury because it's a procedural problem, as well as general disorders where the primary link is under administration site. Although, as we said, catheter site bruise is there, general disorders and administration site. So thinking that the catheter is there.
Jane, just a short question while you are demonstrating in the browser. We have a question, where can I find the explanation of all the colors of Medra terms? So the legends.
Yes. Okay, let me show you. So I'm in, this is the new browser. So I'll scroll to the top of the browser. The new browser, if you're not familiar with it, I'll just take a moment to explain. All the functionality is along the top. I've customized the browser. If you opened it, you probably wouldn't have these icons at the top. You wouldn't have this panel down the right-hand side. That's because the browser is customizable so that you can have the functions that you use most commonly on the top of the navigation bar. And that's why you'll see when Carol Ann uses her browser, she's got all these functions are larger with buttons. Mine are just represented by icons. And how I did that was by applying them through the gear, the settings, and I activated all the things along the top from the settings. So you can spend some time exploring that and to see that. So that's what the browser looks like this. But for the legend, I go to the top left-hand corner, 3 horizontal lines that there. Our colleagues in the US call this a hamburger menu because the 3 lines look like a sandwich. And then there we've got an option for legend, and there are the color coding. So that's the color coding of around the PT. The color coding, that was where you saw that the general disorders was the primary SOC for catheter site bruise. That's why it's blue. It's primary and it does have links elsewhere. We saw it has 4 links elsewhere. The primary SOC is shown in blue. The color coding of the wording HLT and HLGT has no meaning at all. It's just to help our eye when we look down to help distinguish. It has no meaning. Does that help?
Thank you, Jane.
Okay, so let's go back to our slides. We've done our browsing. We don't make any assumptions of the purpose for the cannula. We code it as reported. We've looked for synonyms. We've seen in MEDRA that it treats the word cannula and catheter as interchangeable. We've looked for suitable terms. If I hadn't have found bruise, I would have looked for contusion, or the browser would have given me the word contusion, but bruise is more commonly used in relation to procedural sites. And we would capture the nature of the complication as the priority rather than a cannula site complication or reaction. Catheter site bruise. Okay, and that's my 3 examples. So if you don't have any more questions or comments, Carol-Anne, I'll hand over to you and you can take us forward.
There's only a comment here, so that sometimes if you only have the verbatim for coding purposes, it's really difficult to decide what to select, because of course cannulation or decannulation may refer to many different procedures. So sometimes it's really important to have some more information regarding the procedure in order to decide how to code this this term.
Yes, yes, we agree. In clinical trials, you might know that the drug is given intravenously, and so it's the reporter often knows what they mean. They're meaning an administration site. But in pharmacovigilance, it's perhaps even more difficult because you don't know what the patient has had.
Okay, Jane, then I take over.
Thank you, Carol-Anne.
So here we have another cannula site reaction, but here it is further specified that it is a reaction to the plaster that secures, that fixes the cannula. So do we know what type of reaction happened? And can we assume it's a local or maybe even a systemic, a more extensive reaction? What is more important, by the way? Is it the fact that the reaction occurred at the cannula site, or that it was caused by the plaster? So what would be the most appropriate LLT or LLTs? How should we prioritize this information? How would you code reaction to cannula plaster? Would you code to adhesive plaster sensitivity, plaster allergy, topical adhesive reaction, a more vague term, allergic reaction NOS, catheter site hypersensitivity, catheter site dermatitis, or would you split code to capture the specifics of the reaction, that it was a reaction to the plaster and the affected site, the cannula site? I see you voting. So let's see what you're going for. Most of you are going for adhesive plaster sensitivity. Some also do topical adhesive reaction, plaster allergy, catheter site hypersensitivity, and others would split code to capture specifics of the reaction and the affected site. So let me close the poll and look at the reference here. So the most common cause of a plaster reaction is an adhesive allergy, we are told. And this adhesive allergy results in a contact dermatitis. And a contact dermatitis could be either an allergic contact dermatitis, meaning that a person is allergic to some of the components of the plaster, or it could be an irritant contact dermatitis, so just an irritation of the skin, but not due to an allergic reaction. And we are also told that it may even relate to a latex allergy, because many of these plasters, or some of them, really contain latex, and that's why patients that are allergic to latex may also have a reaction to a plaster. So, and we are told that 5% of the UK population at least are thought to have a latex allergy. So this reference rather refers to a plaster allergy, but in our case, no allergy was reported. It was just that a reaction to the plaster was reported, not an allergy. So Dorlands, when looking into Dorlands, we get the definition for the contact dermatitis. So chronic dermatitis caused by substances coming in contact with the skin. And this may be due to either allergic or non-allergic mechanisms. And if it is an allergic mechanism, then it is an allergic contact dermatitis, of course, and a non-allergic one would be called an irritant dermatitis. So let me switch to the browser now. Here we are. I'm using the old one. Logging in. You see it looks different from what we saw when Jane was demonstrating the browser. So it's much more busy. You see all the features in the user interface already. So here we are. You see that we are using the English version, the version that we are using. We are looking into the SOC view. You have all the functionalities here, the Medra concept descriptions, the legends, and so forth. Here's a search window. Here you can explore the full hierarchy, all the system organ classes by opening them, by clicking on the plus signs. You can do the top-down search, and you can select certain system organ classes if you want to restrict your search to a certain system organ class, for instance. So let me now look for the terms that were offered in our poll. The allergic reaction and the NOS is of course much too vague. We have such a term in Medra. It's just grouped under hypersensitivity. So this is much too vague. We would always try to code as specifically as possible. So that's too vague. What about catheter site? We saw that only 2 cannula terms are available, but that these 2 are all grouped under catheter site reaction terms. So I would look for catheter site hypersensitivity, for instance, and we have, of course, a term that is an exact match. When I do a right mouse click, I see the hierarchy here. It's grouped in the primary SOC general disorders under the administration site reactions, but has secondary linkages to the immune system disorders. Of course, it's a hypersensitivity, an allergic reaction, and to the injury, poisoning, and procedural complications SOC. So if I click on the catheter site here, you see we have many of these terms in Medra: vasculitis, ulcer, scar, papule, pain, necrosis, ischemia, whatsoever. And here is our catheter site hypersensitivity. So we also had the dermatitis in our poll. Let's look for this one. Here we are, right mouse click, go to browser, and it brings us to the hierarchy. Here it is, catheter site dermatitis. so an inflammation of the skin. In our case, the reaction was caused by the plaster, not by the cannula, or even the drug that was administered via the cannula. So what we want to capture is that the reaction was caused by the plaster. The cannula site is not relevant in this case, so no splitting is necessary. So we have a local reaction, yes. We have to somehow capture that it was a local reaction, but to the plaster. So let's look for the terms that relate to plasters. And we had the adhesive plaster sensitivity, it was one of them. Here we are, right mouse click, go to browser, select. You see again that it has secondary linkages to immune systems. Of course, the primary SOC is the manifestation site, it's skin disorders. And here we see the adhesive plaster sensitivity. This term is grouped under dermatitis contact. And we see that let me switch off the non-current and search again, because it's otherwise the screen is too busy. Here we are again. So here we have the adhesive plaster sensitivity, and we see that the allergic contact dermatitis and the dermatitis irritant contact, they are both grouped under this PT, dermatitis contact. And then we have very specific terms. First, the adhesive plaster sensitivity, we have adhesive tape allergy, we have the topical adhesive reaction, we have the plaster allergy. So all the terms that we saw in the poll, all of them are grouped under the same PT, dermatitis contact. But as mentioned already, we always want to be as specific as possible. So how to decide what to select in this instance? Adhesive plaster sensitivity, plaster allergy, or topical adhesive allergy. So what would be the correct approach here? So we don't know whether it was an allergic or an irritant contact dermatitis. The only thing that we know is that it was an adhesive plaster that was used for fixing the cannula, this plaster has caused the reaction. So adhesive plaster reaction would not be suitable. We don't know whether it was the adhesive. We don't know whether it was a latex allergy, was not reported. So topical adhesive reaction would be not suitable because we don't know whether the adhesive actually has caused reaction. So we are left with adhesive plaster sensitivity and plaster allergy. In our case, only a reaction was reported, not an allergy. That is why I would rather go for adhesive plaster sensitivity. And the word sensitivity does not equal hypersensitivity. So let's search for suitable similar terms in order to reassure ourselves that we are on the right track. So let's look for sensitive skin, for instance. We have a lot of them, many of them autosensitization, hypersensitivity, whatsoever. I could now do an advanced search and look for sensitive skin and say it should not contain, my search results should not contain hypersensitivity. And then it becomes much clearer, my search result. So we have a term, sensitive skin. Here it is, has its own PT. If I look into the hierarchy, here we are. We have the sensitive skin. Well, hypersensitive skin is under the same PT, sensitive skin. it looks a bit odd because it's not hypersensitive. So what is the skin subcutaneous tissue disorders? I think hypersensitive skin does not mean that the skin suffers a hypersensitivity. So it has no link to immune system disorders. So this is something we could consider, sensitivity of the skin. So I feel comfortable by selecting the adhesive plaster sensitivity LLT for the reported condition, because it does not assume that it is an allergic reaction. It could also be an irritation that is caused by the adhesive plaster. Of course, it could also be an allergy. We don't know. It was not reported. So this would be the best match for our verbatim. So let me go back to my presentation here. And here again, screenshots of the MEDRA hierarchy. You see the allergic contact dermatitis and the dermatitis irritant contact, both grouped under PT dermatitis contact, and then the relevant LLTs, adhesive plaster sensitivity, plaster allergy, and also the topical adhesive reaction. And we go for the adhesive plaster sensitivity. And you see that dermatitis contact has linkages to injury and secondary ones and immune system disorders, but the primary is, of course, the manifestation side, the skin. Latex allergy I didn't show. So latex allergy has a separate PT rubber sensitivity, but also has, of course, a linkage to immune system disorders. Oops. And here the catheter site terms that could be considered, but we said that it's not appropriate in our case because the reaction was due to the plaster and it was not actually caused either by the cannula or by the drug that was administered via the cannula. So that's why the catheter site dermatitis and catheter site hypersensitivity terms would not be appropriate. The points to consider document clearly indicate when we should split into more than one MEDRA term. So only if it provides more medically relevant information, like in these instances, of course, diarrhea and vomiting would need to be split into diarrhea and vomiting. Wrist fracture due to fall needs to be split into wrist fracture and fall, or BRAF positive malignant melanoma has to be split into BRAF gene mutation because this is relevant for the treatment and the prognosis of the patient, and malignant melanoma. But these examples are not comparable with the given verbatim that we have. Our event is a reaction to the plaster, meaning that it is a local reaction and no splitting is required to capture the fact that the plaster was used to fix the cannula. The fact that the plaster reaction occurred at the cannula site is not medically relevant in this instance. And such prioritization rules actually need to be included in internal coding conventions for the coders so that they know how to handle similar verbatims, how to prioritize information. So here are the learning points. We would, of course, search MEDRA for all possible terms to capture reactions to the dressings and see the secondary linkages of these terms to reassure ourselves that we are on the right track. We would use medical judgment to understand the type of reaction. So what is more important? Is it the plaster site in this instance, or is it the local reaction at the cannula site? We would follow company conventions to prioritize the reported elements, meaning the nature of the reaction, here the plaster reaction, and the device site. And of course, coding may be product dependent, may really depend on the product portfolio of the respective company. So if it's a device company, it would be handled differently than it was drug plasters, for instance. So the adhesive plaster sensitivity LLT is closest to the wording of our verbatim and captures the condition that was reported. It does not assume an allergy, which was not reported, And when assigning this LLT, we do not assume that the reaction is an adhesive or latex allergy. The wording adhesive plaster is neutral. Any questions, Jane?
Yes, we've had one question and one comment, Carol Ann. So I don't know if you can go to the browser and show all the LLTs under the PT of dermatitis contact for me. The question we had was, what about the LLT adhesive plaster skin injury, which is a different concept there, skin injury?
Okay.
Is the first question.
Let me check. Here we have the adhesive plaster injury. It's grouped under skin injury. So skin injury is again something, well, something is an injury in my view. Let's see whether there are additional LLTs that are grouped under this PT. Let us look. Always important to check the hierarchy. We have adhesive plaster skin injury, adhesive tape skin injury, degloving injury, scalp injury, skin damage. So this means that something happened with the skin. Some parts of the skin were removed when removing the plaster or the tape. So it's really an injury to the skin. It's not just a reaction. It's more specific.
It's more of an external cause, isn't it?
Yeah,
it's an external
cause. Yeah. So
resulting
in a wound.
Thank you, Carol. And probably, as you say, some skin's been peeled off of the skin's delicate. And the other comment is from Kirsten that when a company might have a convention that when there are a number of LLTs that could be selected under the same PT, the company may suggest that you select the PT.
Yes, you could, but usually we say that you should code as specific as possible. And because it's reported that it was a plaster reaction, we would try to capture it, and we could, with the 3 LLTs that were available for the plaster reactions.
Yes, it's sometimes hard to distinguish between them. I think that was her point there. If you really can't tell between them, of course you choose the closest, but if you really can't tell, then the PT does have a copy of itself, and that might be what some companies choose to do for consistency. Thank you, Caroline. That's all the questions we've had so far.
Okay, then let me continue. Oop, where am I? Now we have the next one, skin reaction around cannula site. Again, a cannula verbatim. So what has to be captured here? The fact that it was a local reaction, yes, but should we capture that the local skin reaction occurred or that the cannula site was affected? Again, just a reminder, Sudorlens clearly indicates that cannula can be considered like a catheter, so it's can be considered a synonym, cannula and catheter, and this is also what we saw in MEDRA, that the cannula LLTs are grouped under catheter PTs. So how would you code skin reaction around cannula site? Would you prioritize the skin reaction, or would you prefer localized skin reaction? Would you try to capture the fact that the event occurred at the cannula site by selecting catheter site dermatitis or cannula site reaction, or would you split code to localize skin reaction and cannula site reaction, or localized skin reaction and catheter site dermatitis? What would you do? I see you voting. Let's see what you're going for. So most of you would split code localized skin reaction and cannula site reaction, but others would also only code to cannula site reaction. Others would code to localized skin reaction. So we have split of opinions here, but the favorite one is obviously to split code into localized skin reaction and cannula site reaction. Let me close the poll and again switch to the browser. So skin reaction is of course more vague, does not capture the local nature. Oops, do not find anything with a typo. Here we are, skin reaction, right mouse click, go to browser. We see it has a link to immune system disorders even. And if I click on the term, it brings me to the hierarchy. Here we have the skin reaction, delayed skin reaction, generalized skin reaction, localized skin reaction localized. So we have localized and generalized terms under the PT skin reaction. So we would of course try to code as specifically as possible. We would select localized skin reaction because this was reported. It is at the cannula site, but it's grouped under skin reaction, so a more general term. Catheter site dermatitis. We saw that already is considered. It's grouped in general disorders. Here we are. Here we are. So it would capture the fact that the skin is affected, but it would make an assumption assigning this term because we would assume that the reaction, the skin, the localized skin reaction is an inflammation. But we don't know whether it was an inflammation. You see that there are other terms that also relate to the skin: cellulitis, bruise, discoloration, dryness, eczema, erosion, erythema, hematoma, induration, irritation. So lots of these terms: pallor, rash, scab, scar, ulcer. So all very specific terms that relate to skin reactions, but there's no term that would just say catheter site skin reactions, only skin related. So it's just very specific ones that we can find here. Cannula site reaction. Is grouped under catheter site related reactions. So again, a very vague term. Let's see whether there are more specific terms underneath, but I don't think so. Here, cannula site reaction or cannula site related reaction. So this is a vague term that can be used when the reaction itself is not specified. So there is no meta term that would capture the full information of our verbatim. Question is whether split coding will then be necessary. So Medra tells us that if no term is available that includes both the body site and the event information, then we should select a term for the event rather than a term that reflects a non-specific condition at the body site. And the example that is provided is skin rash on chest. We would just assign skin rash. But we are also told that sometimes medical judgment is required. So sometimes the body site information should have priority, as in the example below. Cyanosis at injection site should not just be coded to cyanosis, because this would be misleading, but rather to injection site discoloration in order to point out the local reaction at the injection site. So here are our learning points for our skin reaction around cannula site. We have to use medical judgment when considering the site of the cannula and the tissue type that was affected. We should, of course, capture the type of the reaction, the skin reaction, that it was not a vascular reaction, for instance, and the site of the reaction, the cannula site, where possible. And we should refer to company conventions or create company conventions which may be product dependent. And if more details are needed, then of course we would seek clarification. We would say that we would go to either cannula site reaction. That would be the first option that captures the affected site, but of course not the specifics of the condition. It could be an infection, a granuloma, erosion, necrosis, anything. It is really vague. So if it should be captured together with a specific reaction, then splitting will become necessary. And this is a company decision. The other option is to prioritize the specific reaction and code to LLT local skin reaction, as the PTC document recommends, to really the event should have priority. The general coding approach for such scenarios has to be decided by the individual company. It has to be documented accordingly in your coding conventions and has to be applied consistently. And it's really dependent on the product portfolio, if you are a device company or if you have drug plasters or whatsoever. Another option would, of course, be to submit a change request to the MSSO to get a new term for catheter site skin reaction. So a more vague term, but that captures the fact that the skin was affected by the reaction. Because when looking into the browser, you saw that only terms for specific skin conditions are currently available in MedRA. Any questions, Jane?
No, Caroline, no questions, Caroline.
Okay, so then I proceed to the next one. And here we have a complete loss of sensation after he has used the cream. Which body site is affected by the complete loss of sensation? Is it the site of the cream? Is there a causal relationship between the loss of sensation and the administration of the cream? And which LLT or LLTs should we select here for this specific verbatim? Dorlins clearly indicates that the loss of sensation, the medical term for it is anesthesia, usually caused by damage to a nerve or a receptor. And when an abnormally decreased sensitivity is reported, then the medical term would be hypoesthesia. So what would you do with this verbatim? Complete loss of sensation after he had used the cream. Would you go to administration site anesthesia, administration site hypoesthesia, application site anesthesia, or application site hypoesthesia, loss of sensation, local anesthesia, or would you seek clarification? What would you do? So let's again have a look. So most of you are voting for application site anesthesia, but others also for loss of sensation. Others would see clarification. Nobody is voting for local anesthesia, good to see. Administration site anesthesia. So there's a split of opinion between administration application site, and some of you would go to loss of sensation as well. So let me close the poll. So first of all, let me show a MedRA concept description, and I will show you in a minute where to find these concept descriptions. So here, the concept description for application site tells us for the purposes of MedRA, an application site is considered to be the surface that contacts a topical medication in the form of a cream, lotion, or patch, like an estrogen hormone patch, and it does not pertain to other methods of drug delivery, such as injection or infusion by catheter or other means. So it's fully clear that in our case, we would talk, or we would go to an application site PT, because we are talking about a cream, the topical administration of a cream, and that would then relate to an application site. Again, let me switch to the browser. First of all, here in the old MedRA browser, you find the MedRA concept descriptions on the top. They are sorted in alphabetical order. So here we have the application site concept descriptions that I've just shown you. And you have many, many terms that are addressed here. Cancer carcinoma are considered synonyms in MedDRA, for instance. What is considered an aggravated condition, and some other concept descriptions for medication errors, but also for product quality issues, for instance. So always worthwhile to look into these concept descriptions. Now, let's look for the local anesthesia. Nobody has voted for this one, and that's good, because as always you should check the hierarchy of such terms in order to make sure that you are on the right track. So the local anesthesia, if I go to browser, you see it's considered a surgical procedure. Here, surgical medical procedure. It's really a local anesthesia procedure. So this is not what was reported in our case. We have, of course, the administration site anesthesia and administration site hypoesthesia, but we saw that we should select application site, and because it's a complete loss of sensation based on the Dorlans, we would consider this in anesthesia. And here's our anesthesia at application site anesthesia. Go to browser. Again, we have it. Primary SOC is general disorders with secondary linkages to injury and nervous system disorders. And if I click on this LLT, we are brought to the hierarchy, to the SOC window here, the Explore window, and you see application site anesthesia. Here it is. And there's many, many application site terms that you can see here. So many of them are available: warm, scab, photosensitivity reaction, whatsoever. So many of those. But we know it's a loss of sensation, so it's an anesthesia. Loss of sensation, of course, would describe a systemic reaction, but we want to capture the fact that it is a local reaction at the application site. Or can we be sure? Some of you went for loss of sensation because obviously they were not sure whether this really then is restricted to the application site. Is it clear that it will always relate to a local reaction at the application site of the cream, or can it be that it's it's not restricted to the application site but more extensive, a more systemic reaction? Let me switch back here. And here's a reference again that we found. So it's referring to a pain cream, and it states that the topically applied active pharmaceutical ingredient intends to treat local or regional pain by blocking nerve signals, reducing inflammation, relaxing muscle spasms, etc. But we are told that in some instances, distal responses to this topical application may occur. So our reported complete loss of sensation may not be restricted to the application site. We cannot assume that, and we don't know what type of cream was administered to the patient. No idea. We only know it was a cream, it was administered, and there was a loss of sensation. So look at the verbatim and consult medical dictionaries and references to better understand what happened to our patient. The temporal relationship to the cream application is of course relevant. The complete loss of sensation took place after applying the cream. But we cannot be fully sure that the complete loss of sensation is a local application site reaction. A systemic reaction is most likely rare, but our patient could be one of these rare cases. So we don't know. And that is why our final suggestion would be to seek clarification whether the loss of sensation is confined to the application site of the cream or whether it is systemic, more extensive. But if no further information can be obtained, we would go to application site anesthesia, because this is the most probable background for the reported scenario. Any questions, Jane?
No, I think the comments have all relate to things that you've already covered, Carol-Anne. So that would be the suggestion that it could be a systemic reaction you've addressed, and the LLT of anesthesia application sites. So I think we're all square on that. Let me just double check. No more. That's fine. Thank you.
Then I hand back to you, Jane, then.
Okay, thank you very much. So I'll take over now the next set. The first term we have here is cold sensation right hand. What is the patient feeling here? We're moving on now to a set of terms which relate to temperatures. So I apologize, we're not going to get through them all today, but we will continue with them at our next session, which is going to be in November. So not long to wait. Hold on to your notes if you've got notes, and come back. We'd love to see you back in November. So the first one is a cold sensation right hand. What is the patient feeling? Is the fact that it's just the right hand relevant? And what do we code it to? So how would you code it? We've selected some for you here. Skin temperature decreased, sensation of cold, coldness local, cold hands, feeling cold, temperature difference of arms, or see clarification. Okay, so carry on voting. Let's see where you are. Sensation of cold is our most popular choice. That's very good to see because it does match what's been reported. You're obviously looking at the reported event. Cold sensation, sensation of cold, good to see. Coldness local, well, yeah, it is local and it's cold, so I can see why you would choose that one. Cold hands, I'm pleased that nobody selected skin temperature decreased, and we'll see in the browser why. Feeling cold, or some of you would seek clarification. So that's good to see. Quite a clear result there on that one. So let's browse. I'll go to the browser, have a look again. So my feeling is when I see that it's a sensation, I think of it being a subjective thing, something the patient experiences, something they may describe, and not a clinical sign as such, not a test result. So this is what I'm going to focus on. So I've searched for cold. I've got a lot of terms there. Cold, 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 cold. Let's put cold sensation and see what we get. Let's go from there. So we've got the sensation of cold, some others which are not relevant to our search. Let's start with this, feeling cold. So let's have a look at the hierarchy, clicking bottom up. It is a feeling and sensation of cold. That looks like a good choice. Sensation of cold. Let's have a look at the LLTs underneath it. We've got feeling cold, chilliness, coldness, coldness general, coldness local, feeling cold, sensation of cold. So that does look like a very good choice, I would say, as a starting point. Some of you did look for the temperature terms. So let's have a look at the temperature. Temperature difference was one of them, wasn't it? Temperature difference of limbs or arms, extremities, legs. Let's have a look at the hierarchy of that one for those of you who chose that. This is a physical examination procedure. So this will fall into the SOC of investigations. So temperature difference of arms is something that would be a clinical finding found through physical examination. So we don't want to choose a term which is a patient described subjective symptom or sensation to a lab result. So that was the main point I wanted to make on this one. Coldness local, we've seen the placement of that one. Let's have a look at cold hands before we move on, because that will capture the fact that it was the hand, and we say we should be specific. So cold hands has a PT of peripheral coldness. This does have a link into an HLT of feelings and sensations, but it also links into vascular as secondary links. Peripheral coldness sounds to me more like a more extensive, more medical, something else is going on, cold hands, whereas ours feels, it sounds like it's quite maybe a transient experience or something else. This has a vascular primary shock. So that supports what I was thinking of, that this is more of a diagnosis or more of a medical thing. So of the two, I prefer the one that we've already seen. So let's go back to I won't look at every term. Let's have a look at what we've learned. You all got it very well there. Search for sensation terms to capture the closest matching LLT. So we found the term with cold and sensation. Don't assume a diagnosis or something more systemic like peripheral coldness, where there's something going on, as we've just seen, that had a primary shock of vascular. Don't select an investigation result. So that was skin temperature decreased, which none of you selected, and also the difference in skin temperature between the arms. So I would select coldness local, which has a PT of feeling cold, and that's the same place as cold sensation. So you could have chosen cold sensation of cold. It was the same, the NLLT under the same PT. I've just chosen the local one because it captures the fact it's specific to just an area like the right hand. So sensation of cold, you could have chosen, or coldness local, same under the same PT, feeling cold. Any questions on that, Carol Ann?
No, just a comment that there is a clear difference between being cold, so some area on the body or body side being cold due to circulatory problems, and the feeling of coldness, that is a perception by the patient.
Perception, feeling. Well, it comes back to where we started, feeling. When you have a feeling term, you should look for feeling or sensation. Now we're coming, thank you, Caroline. If there's nothing else, I'll do this one because we see if we can cover this one before we finish. Increase sensitivity now to cold drinks. So we've been talking about sensation being a perception, a subjective experience. Sensitivity makes us think about a neurological thing. So sensitivity, we sometimes see the terms that say aesthesia, dysesthesia, paresthesia. So this is what crosses my mind when I first see this one. What is being reported? Well, there's some kind of sensitivity in the stimulus here is cold drinks. So is it a mouth problem? Is it a dental problem? Or is it even a systemic, wider all body problem? We don't know that. Mouth, dental, probably is mouth or dental, but can we assume? Is it sensitive teeth, for example? Is it, what would be the most appropriate LLT? So how would you code this one? We've got some long terms there: thermohyperesthesia, cryesthesia, temperature perception test increased, cold stimulus headache. Well, is it a headache that they've got with the sensitivity to cold drinks? Is it teeth? Is it oral? Which of these are you going to go for? Sensitivity this time. Yeah, let me look at your votes. Carry on voting. I'm going to have a look. Oral temperature sensitivity is very popular there, that you're thinking because it's drinks, using medical judgment or using just common sense. Is it the mouth? Is it the teeth? Some of you like the teeth term. Some of you have gone for thermohyperesthesia. So that captures what I was saying to you about aesthesia term, is what I tend to think of when I think of sensitivity, a neurological thing like paresthesia. Cryesthesia is another one. A few of you have chosen. Some of you want to seek clarification. And I'm assuming that's probably to ask, what is it that's happening here? Is it the mouth, the teeth, the headache? What is it? Nobody selected cold stimulus headache. So interesting. Oral temperature sensitivity, capturing the word sensitivity, seems to be the most popular choice. I'll close the poll. Very popular choice, in fact, that one. So let's have a quick browse in the poll in the browser. Let's look up. Oh, I've got to close this one. So let me hang on. Just bear with me. I've got to close this. There we go. Let's have a look up sensitivity here. Sensitive. Let's see what we get. We're probably going to have too many, aren't we? So let's look up the oral sensitivity. You said let's look up oral and see. Oral temperature sensitivity. Let's start with that one as we're short of time. Oral hyperesthesia. That's quite a nice term. It's got the sensation, sensitivity, sensitivity rather there, as I was saying, and it's an oral. But that assumes that it is oral. Do we know that it's oral? Could it be dental? Would that be covered by oral? Or could it be a wider? Could it be a headache? Let's have a look at that term I showed you, cold stimulus headache. Could it be a headache? Cold stimulus headache. Where does that link? That has its own PT. That comes under headache. So it's a type of headache stimulated by cold foods or cold drinks. But we don't know it's a headache. So that one's not ideal either. Let's look up aesthesia and see what we get of all the options under aesthesia. So we're having all the site terms. We don't want site. So let's stop or let's ignore all of these application administration site. One of them we had there was thermo hyperesthesia. So thermo, let's come down in the interest of time and talk about it. Thermo hyperesthesia. We also have thermo hypoesthesia. Hyperesthesia, tongue hyperesthesia. So thermo, well, therm is like temperature, isn't it? A thermal, thermo, hyper, high, esthesia, sensation. So that would suggest to me that it's just looking at the term, if I break it down, it seems like it would be an increased sensitivity to temperature. See, hyper, increased, aesthesia, sensitivity, physical sensation to thermotemperature. And it's under neurological disorders as the SOC. So I like that term. Let's go and have a look at it in the browser. I would look it up in Dorland's, of course. Under there, I have cryesthesia as well. Some of you may have heard of cryotherapy, or what does cryo as a prefix mean? Cryo means cold or ice or frozen or whatever the type of therapy. It's a freezing therapy, cryotherapy. So we have here cryesthesia, which could be that it's more specific. It's a sensation to cold. We'd need to look that up, but that's what my inclination is when looking at the term. But certainly I like the look of this one. So I'm going to go back to the browser and see the slides rather, and look these terms up. Thermohyperesthesia is a dysesthesia, so an abnormal sensitivity or physical sensation marked by increased sensitivity to heat and cold, called thermohyperesthesia. And cryesthesia is the same, but it's sensitive, specific to cold. So that's where I'm going to go. The learning is don't make assumptions about specific symptoms. What did I have? My headache? Did I have my cold? There's the cold stimulus headache. I forgot to show you. This is, as I explained, I've got a reference to tell you exactly what it does mean. I looked it up, and it's where a cold substance passes over the palate at the back of the throat, typically due to icy drinks, ice water, or frozen treats like ice cream. So it's a headache that comes, or it's sometimes called brain freeze. And that's it in Medra as an actual concept of brain freeze as well. But we don't know it's a headache, and we've all covered that today. Don't make assumptions. This seems to be sensitive to cold without assuming it's dental, without assuming it's oral. We would browse Medra fully, top down and bottom up. You've seen us do that today, and we would use medical references. We would seek clarification, so I agree with those of you who selected this option to ask about the site and the nature of the sensitivity. And if no further information can be obtained, you should code, we believe you should code to cryesthesia, which is under the PT of thermohyperesthesia. So we're going to leave it there today. If we've got any questions, Carol Ann, then happy to take
just a comment that the cold sensitivity could also relate to the stomach, because sometimes we say that cold drinks are bad for the stomach, and also cold intolerance could be an option in the poll, but cold intolerance, of course, is a more systemic reaction. Yeah.
I think so. Really, I think it does. I agree on that one.
Yeah.
I stopped sharing just for a moment so that you didn't see all the other terms we've got. So if you've got any other questions, put them in, and we're happy to stay and answer questions. But if some of you do need to rush off, please, I've activated this next poll. This is a survey so that you can tell us immediately what you thought of the session today. And you can also, this is your opportunity to tell us any topic or any specific verbatim term you'd like us to consider for a future session. We will continue. You've had a taster there of the cold terms. We've had two themes today in our session. We're moving on now to cold. So we'll continue with the cold related terms or temperature terms in November when we reconvene. Do give us any feedback that you've got here that you want us to take into consideration. Apologies that we didn't get through them all today. Let me show you where we've been doing this now for about 3 or more. Look at that, Carol Ann, how long since we've been doing it, 2020. We've been doing a lot of these, so you can imagine we have a big repository of verbatim terms. They're all on YouTube, the recordings, and when you go to the individual recording, you can see the terms that are covered in that session. So you can click on the description of the session, it will tell you the verbatims, and you can navigate to where you want to see it. You can also contact us, tell us what you thought of the session. You'll get another survey sent to you as well as an automatic. It automatically comes, but you can tell us either here or in the other one what you thought. If you have any questions for us, you can contact us. You can also join one of our WhatsApp groups through the QR codes on our contact page. So I think that's everything there. We've got some links for you on the browser.
Jane, could you show shortly on the website how to get to the YouTube channel? We had such a question before.
Yes. So through our own website, you can look at, if you go under training, there are training materials. This is where you can see that there are training materials. Look under coding. It tells you all the coding webinars we do. There's Let's Code Together. You'll find that there's streaming based on the most recent one. We give this in a number of languages. So there's the YouTube playlist there. The Chinese videos are stored on a different platform, but there's the YouTube playlist, and you can click there and it will take you straight to the YouTube channel. This is where we have playlists for all our presenters. Carol Ann and I have a separate one for Let's Code because we do it in combination. You see there all the Let's Code combinations of us and our colleagues. So that's where you can see the full playlist, and when you look at an individual session, it will list the terms which are covered in that session. Yeah. Is that what you wanted, Carol Ann?
Yeah, it's the medication error webinar though.
I clicked the wrong one, did I? Oh, sorry. I'm talking and not looking. I'm sorry. Did I click the medication? Did I not go to Let's Code? Let's Code YouTube. There we go. Let's Code YouTube. MSSO. Where did I go? Let's Code. There's me. There's Carol Ann. You get the idea. You choose Let's Code. Let's Code. Oh, coding. It's because we're together, Carol Ann. That's why.
Yeah, that's why.
Let's Code. Here we go. There we are together. English Let's Code. I'm looking at the pictures. There's one. Okay, you see all of them. You get the idea. Also, while we're on the website, just a very quick, just to make you aware that we do have a LMS online learning. If you like online learning, we've got some topics now which are covered in more detail than we do in our other webinars. Things like the topics we cover here, things like pregnancy, medication errors, and you can have a look at these through the, I'm trying to find the link for it, the LMS through our training page, training offerings. Is it there? There's a link to it, isn't there? Training materials, instructional videos, that's where I go. Here we go. So the videos are on the page down here, Medra Fundamentals. They've also been put in an LMS, and the LMS system is better because you can create an account, and that means you can earn certificates if you follow the pathway along the learning management system pathway. So just there. It takes a bit of signing up. It's a two-step approach to create an account, but once you've created an account, every time you go back to it, you're straight in. So I realize we're over time. I'm really sorry. We will wrap it up here. Thank you all so much for your participation, for your attention today. Carol Ann and I really enjoy these sessions. Thank you, Carol Ann, for your involvement, for your collaboration. And I really hope, yeah, always fun, isn't it? I look forward to seeing you all in November, middle of November. That'll be posted very soon, so get signed up and we'll carry on then where we left off with our temperature related terms. In the meantime, if you've got any terms for us to look at, to code with you, send them in and we'll have a look at them in advance. Thank you all, everyone. Enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Bye-bye. Bye-bye for now.
Bye-bye. Bye-bye.